Привет! So it is the morning of March 18th, around midday Kyiv time, and many Ukrainians are going to be waiting, and many analysts from all over the world, political commentators, journalists, for the Trump-Putin phone call that will take place in the morning US time. So presumably in the next 5 or 6 hours, I will make a response to it here on my channel. And the signs are not encouraging from a Ukrainian point of view, but very little has been encouraging out of the White House since Donald Trump took power, and especially in the last few weeks. Obviously, we had the blow up in the Oval Office, and then US cutting off not just financial aid, but also pausing military and intelligence aid, which coincided with Russia seizing a considerable part of the Kursk Oblast, retaking that territory in Russia, de jure Russia, that had been occupied by Ukraine. Ukraine now has just a tiny sliver of that. So yesterday, Donald Trump said that he was getting ready to divide up assets with Vladimir Putin, which doesn't bode well for Ukraine. It sounds like he's doing some sort of business deal, and it is not US assets that are going to be on the menu. It is clearly Ukrainian assets. Moreover, there was a press conference with the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, yesterday, and she talked about territories and nuclear power plants. She seemed to be under the impression that the nuclear power plant in question is near the border between Ukraine and Russia. The only nuclear power plant that is under occupation by either side is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is not actually in the city of Zaporizhzhia. It's actually, which is under Ukrainian control. It's south of that, just off the river Dnipro, and it is in a town called Enohodar that has been under occupation since early 2022. So that is nowhere near the actual de jure Russian-Ukrainian border. It is hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away. Actually, it's quite a considerable distance. It's maybe even 1,000 kilometers away. It is extremely far from the actual border. If you look at it, that Crimea is de jure Ukraine, so we're talking about the border all the way across to Russia itself. Is that a Freudian slip by the White House press secretary? Does she see the new border as actually being the line of contact, an officially recognized border, and they're going to maybe do some deal on the nuclear power plant, that maybe Ukraine would get control of it again, but it would be basically an enclave in a new border? That is extremely worrying. Obviously, we have international law, and your UN Charter says you can't basically redraw the borders using military force, and this Russian series of invasions starting in 2014 of Ukraine are all illegal. They also violate other agreements between Russia and Ukraine, the series of treaties, some of them even signed by Vladimir Putin. Before Putin came to power, we had the Budapest Memorandum, where Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons in exchange for security assurances. So none of that has worked out too well. But the fact that the US seems to be negotiating over dividing up assets and doesn't really seem to have a firm idea in their head where the de jure border is between Ukraine and Russia is deeply concerning from a Ukrainian point of view. Whether Donald Trump would actually be able to compel Ukraine to sign what seems to be more or less a capitulation treaty to Russia remains to be seen. I am particularly skeptical about that. However, we did see the impact when the US effectively blackmailed Ukraine earlier in the week by turning off the intel and the military aid. The really important thing there was the intel and the satellites that actually comes from commercial US companies, but they were also prevented from sharing that information with Ukraine, because if you can't see your enemy on the battlefield, then in this new area of drone warfare evolution, you are in a very vulnerable position. That seems to probably have been a contributing factor. The speed of the Russian advance in Kursk was definitely a surprise, and it coincided neatly with the US doing that. So I will react later on the channel, just a little update about what we can expect as we wait here in Europe for what it will be an important phone call in the context of the Russo-Ukrainian war.